So a few weeks ago, I started the redesign work for the Ziglang website, and as a starting point, I thought it would be a good idea to see what other programming languages are doing. So I prepared a spreadsheet and started looking at all websites of the programming languages that I know. So Nim, Ruby, Python, Rust, Go, and a few more. This was interesting because you could see that they are all very different. Each is doing different things. There are some common themes, of course, but the devil is in the detail, right? You don't want to have a like you want to know how these websites communicate, what a potential user is looking to see immediately at a glance, and when websites break some of those expectations, they tend to have a good reason to do that. So it was an interesting exploration. Now, one language that stood out in that search was Rust, because Rust had a redesign to the website that happened in 2018. And there was a lot of controversy about that. So that's what I want to talk in this video. As for the work for the Ziglang redesign, I'm gonna talk about it in another video, in a community update video. So this one is dedicated just to the Rust website, Debacle. So what happened, and why am I calling it a debacle? Because it really was a debacle. I'm not the only one calling it that. But let's take a look at the website. So this is the old website. This is the website that people actually like. It's very simple, very minimalistic. Rust logo, top navigation menu, slogan. Rust is a systems programming language that runs blazingly fast, prevents seg faults, and guarantees thread safety. Call to action, big call to action button, install Rust. Smaller call to action. These are the release notes, I guess, yes. And then you have a code sample and a list of features, plus a couple of links that give you more information. That's not bad. That's nice. That's a nice front page. I like it. Now, let's take a look at the new website. This is the new website from 2018. Now, people hate this website, or at least maybe I don't know if today they hate it still. But the moment this was released, a lot of people really genuinely hated it. Now, I'll try to dive into the reasons why. But first, before we do that, let me just give a quick look at the website, and I'll also provide an analysis from my point of view of what the website is trying to achieve. And this is based on my experience working in technical marketing, and seeing how these websites for technical products like programming languages tend to be structured, and what the way the structure, like what the structure tries to convey, what audience they try to appeal to. So this is based on that experience, and I'll use also that experience also to give my take on what I think happened with this website. But before we get there, let's first take a look at the site itself. So again, title, slogan, a language empowering everyone to build reliable and efficient software. This is a very nice slogan. There was another slogan in between the two that wasn't really good. I don't remember it by heart, but it was, I thought it was kind of embarrassing, but I'm glad they changed it to this one. So that was nice. Still, big call to action button, get started, and then release note, I guess, for the latest version. What's interesting is that, well, you can see that the big button changed, right? Before it was install, and I guess the implication here is that install, even though this is a getting started, right? But install is mostly, the idea is you know what you need to do. You know what this is, you know how to use it mostly, or if you don't, you can figure it out on your own. Here's the download. Well, here the get started button has a different implication. Implication is we're gonna guide you through the installation step, but also a bit more forward. We're going to tell you, so for example, here it tells you how to get also cargo, other tools like syntax highlighting for your editor, and then how to generate a new project, and then how to add dependencies, and then how to do your first Hello World application, and then how to find more information, and etc. etc. And there's even a presentation of the mascot. So you can see that this is clearly aimed at a different crowd, or more precisely, it's more aimed at people that don't know, maybe for them Rust is their first programming language, and so they need they need more help getting started. Now, this is a small difference, but there are bigger differences if we go and take a look at the rest of the website. So why Rust? Performance, reliability, productivity. So here we have a bit of arguments, like each point here has a small explanation underneath, and these are a bunch of arguments, if you will, more on the marketing side, right, than just a list of features, because this list is it's a list of mostly technical features. Although that said, in my opinion, zero cost abstractions is a marketing term more than a technical one. But that's just my take. But like the general idea is that this is a list of interesting things that interest people in the same, just as I said earlier, that already know about programming languages, and they are curious about the different features that a programming language can have or not. Here, these are more general arguments about what you can get out of this product. If you scroll down, then there's a section built in Rust where they present, I guess, a few, I'm going to call them verticals, like a WebAssembly vertical. Maybe it doesn't sound right, but WebAssembly is a new technology. It's interesting. It makes sense, again, from a marketing perspective, to want to mention it. But when we talk about networking and embedded, those two are definitely reasonable things to call verticals, right? So we have embedded, which is very important, of course. And I'll go also into these different sections, but just to finish the homepage, you have then Rust in production, and you have testimonials. You have testimonials on the front page from NPM and from Yelp, which is another interesting thing. The Rust project decided to put testimonials on the front page. Now, why do you put testimonials on the front page? Why do you have testimonials at all? These are things that normal programmers, normal engineers don't care. Actually, they don't like those. But as you move up the chain, the command chain, the more you move up, the more these things become relevant, because the more decision makers have to make decisions, don't always have the knowledge of making an informed decision, and even if they do, for them the repercussions of making a bad decision are much bigger than what they get from making good decisions. So testimonials are something that allows you to say, well, if others are doing it, it's probably not that bad. So that's why testimonials make sense. Again, when you're talking, when your audience is not just programmers anymore, but it starts being somebody else, somebody more up in the command chain. Now, the front page more or less ends here. You have then get involved, thanks, but yeah, we are near the footer. So let's take a brief look at the different sections. So let's look at the embedded section. One thing that you will notice is that this embedded section, and actually let me also show you the networking section. You'll see that they're all structured more or less in the same way. Why using Rust to do this thing, how to get started, and then testimonials. So this is networking. Embedded, same thing. Why Rust? Oh, they even have a showcase here, okay. But then get started, how to do something, and then use in production with a bunch of testimonials. Let's see if WebAssembly is the same. Yes, why Rust? How to get started. There's another section placeable with JavaScript, okay, and then use in production. So they're not all exactly the same, but you can see that there is clearly a common theme. Let's see if command line also have the same idea. Yes, why Rust? Okay, they have a maintainable code base, so they have another small section about this, and then get started. and then testimonials. So they repeat the same structure also inside each vertical. Now, I think that this is a very clever design, and it's very clear. When you get into a section, also, the idea is that in the Get Started section, they are plugging their books. They have books about each vertical, how to do stuff we like. In the embedded Rust book, I don't know if you can read it, but it's up here. So they have the embedded Rust book. They have also the, I'm assuming, the networking book. Let's take a look. A little more about request, a little more about Rocket. Maybe they don't have a, okay, they don't have a networking book, but let's see if they have a WebAssembly book. Learn more, learn how to boot about applications. Yes, the book. So they have the Rust and WebAssembly book. Then I think command line also has a book. Let's double check. Get started. Yes, the CLI book, command line applications in Rust book. So they even have the book. Now, these books are, I haven't read through all of them, but they're probably introductory material that it's been at the crossroads between pure technical material and marketing material, probably. So it's what's interesting. What I like about what they're doing here is that they have a lot of learning material that they wrote that helps people navigate the things that you can do with Rust and the strengths. Again, marketing doesn't necessarily mean bad and scummy. Good marketing, well done, is a way of allowing people to reach the information that they want to reach. So they have all this material, and they need to have entry points to the material, because a book this thick put in a small link in a corner, this is information, this is effort that they put into creating content that is not going to be used by anybody. So this work that they did allows people to have entry points tailored to their interests, using a categorization that is not overly complicated, right? They have the main website with the same general structure, while Rust, here's a few examples, here's the testimonials. And this is, in my opinion, a very efficient way of making good use of the materials that they have. So personally, I'm a fan of this website. I think it's very well made. Now, when people complain about this website, they had opinions also on the design. I honestly, I'm colorblind, and I don't have strong opinions on it, in all honesty. I don't hate it, I don't love it. But from a structure perspective, from a copy, from the text, from the perspective of the text, and what I see the website achieving from a communication standpoint, I think it's a very well-made, very elegant website. Now, let's read why people hated it and what the hell happened. So, let me scroll to the top from this tab. So this is just one post out of I don't know how many tens there were. Like, there were a lot of discussions all over the all on the Rust forums, on Reddit, I think also on a few other places, because what happened was that the website was developed and put under beta.rustlang.org. And it stayed there for a while they were working on it, but not for long, because then when they published it, they moved it to the main page, and people had a fairly short window of time where they could see the website before it went live. And in general, in the Rust community, there's this expectation where all these decisions, all these development decisions made by the core team, they tend to be exposed to the community. So the community has a window in which to provide comments and PRs and do stuff collaboratively. But here, this didn't happen, or at least it didn't happen in a satisfactory way. So what happened is that people discovered that there was this website being worked on. They started, they didn't like it. So for example, this person says, an alternative design has been put up. The idea of the design has been fixed without community consultation. This completely makes sense when the interface designers design a website. However, the current website has several usability issues, despite being a work of art from a pettiness side. It's really hard to read the text from it. So people didn't like the design, started recommending changes. Also, there was a problem that the website didn't mention an IRC channel, and people kind of started thinking that this was done on purpose and that they were going to remove an important community, well, important at least to them, from the website without consultation for other reasons, and that also became part of the madness, and a few conspiratory theories came up. I have no idea if those were right or wrong, but this was something that also added to the whole mess that happened. So, long story short, what happened is that the website was supposed to be released with the 2018 edition of Rust, and so given the time frames, there wasn't a lot of time for the community to propose changes, and the community was kind of really fired up about how they hated the new website. And there is another comment down here, which I'm gonna read soon, that in my opinion really exemplifies well the problems that the community felt were in the website, and how, in my opinion, not only Mozilla failed to communicate properly, but there was a clear miscommunication that happened. Well, maybe not even just a miscommunication, but Mozilla was attempting to do something that the community didn't like, and Mozilla didn't care to be honest about what they were trying to do. And the community didn't take the hint, and a mess happened. When I saw this, when I saw this, I started thinking, oh shit, what if this happens? Like, since I'm working on your website, I started thinking, oh man, what if this happens to me? What if I make a change to the website and people hate it, and a mess ensues? Well, what I noticed here, and also my question was, okay, let's assume that this can happen. What can I do after to avoid a complete shitstorm? And by looking at what happened with the Rust website debacle, it seems to me that there was no winning move for the moderation team. People were really angry, and they were posting. They were making a lot of posts, angry posts, and moderators were telling these people to, behave, calm down, and have a more normal open discussion. The problem, though, is that the community, again, this is in my opinion, but I think the community was not willing to do that for a correct reason. They somehow felt that there was fishy going on, and so they were not willing to engage in a relaxed, honest, collaborative discussion, because they felt this wasn't what the other party was doing. They felt like the Mozilla team was trying to cheat them into having this behavior, into calming down so that they could have it their way. And of course, mobs, as usual, don't behave rationally, and I'm sure a lot of they put pressure on people that had nothing to do with whatever happened. That always happens. That's a given. So here's my point. I already mentioned this while I was analyzing the website earlier, and to me, again, based on my experience in marketing, it's clear what the Mozilla team was attempting. And I think they were successful at their attempt. And as I said, I think it's a nice website. Point is that the Rust website has stopped being a website for programmers. The website has become a communication tool for communicating what Rust is and why it's important and interesting and readable to decision makers, not to people at the bottom of the command chain, because we have to accept that we developers are at the bottom of the command chain very often. And the more you move up the command chain, the lower the amount of technical prowess and the technical point of view becomes important. Like decision making should be aware of technical problems, of course, but that's not the whole story, right? I'm not saying this in a perfect way, but I hope this is a concept clear enough so that I don't have to. So what happens is that basically the website now is a tool for engineering managers, maybe CTOs, maybe even CIOs, so that they can know what Rust is, be mildly interested. Maybe these are people that work in the embedded space or in a networking space, and or more actually, when we say networking, we basically mean everybody that has some kind of network services. So the microservices world. So these people can feel that the Rust product, which they don't know much about, which they are not going to be the end users, but they want to know that the product is catered to their vertical, more or less. Is this wrong? Is this right? I don't know. You could see it either way. In my opinion, so from my point of view, and I guess this is something that I'm also thinking when thinking about the Ziglang website, I think that you want the project to become successful and to become as widespread as possible. And today for Zig, it's important that we get more programmers. But Rust has got to a point where they already convinced everybody almost. God knows they succeeded at convincing programmers. So for them, the next battle is convincing decision makers. For Zig, for example, today, us trying to convince decision makers is going to be pretty hard. We haven't convinced programmers yet, or we have convinced some, but not all programmers. And so I think it's very healthy for the Rust project to be to a point where what is preventing programmers from being able to work with Rust is that companies have to adopt Rust and they have to make these institutional leaps. So you need to bring decision makers on board. You need to bring engineering managers, as I said earlier, on board. And the communication toward these people has to be different. So these are very nice problems to have, in my opinion. I hope one day that we can get there where we have to say, well, now the Ziglang website should start catering at decision makers. We are not there yet, of course. But again, I think these are good problems to have. So, in my opinion, what the website tries to attempt is very clear and is well executed. The problem is that Mozilla didn't see this to the community, or, I mean, I'm not saying this is a complete secret. To a degree, I actually think that I think people should take a hint, like people should understand that that's what's going on because it's kind of obvious. And we'll see here that like people are picking up on some signals, but some don't are missing a small step that makes them actually realize that yes, this is what's going on, and you have to accept it, and you can't just think that everything has always be designed for you specifically. And there are good reasons for that, reasons that you also at the end of the day would agree if you were to think about it. So people got mad because, in my opinion, got mad because they weren't told that the website is not for programmers. The website is a marketing tool at the end. And as bad as this might sound, the implications are good because it means that your language is very successful and it's moving forward and it's becoming something bigger. And I say this kind of as a joke, but probably the most beautiful, again, this is a joke, but the most beautiful website that a programming language has is the Java programming language, is the Java website. If you go to, I think it's java.com, that's the most beautiful one because it's the language that has captured the world. You go there and there's a download for the JDK, for the Java runtime. it's for users, not even for programmers. They go to a point where they already have everybody using that. So again, no, it's an awful website. I don't like Java, but you get the point, right? Like the website changes in nature based on the growth stage that your project is at, and that's what you want to do. Let's take a look at what people were saying about the Rust website, because I think it's really interesting. So this was a comment in the same thread a bit downstream. And this person says, so they had a bunch of issues with design. That's fine. I'm going to skip those. I think as I said, I don't have strong opinions on the website. I'm not the most, I'm not the right person to have super strong opinions on the design. So I'm just going to skip those. But let's talk about content, because I think this is more interesting and more clear cut. So the wording is sensationalistic in various parts, which makes the website seem oriented more towards a corporate speak audience rather than the technical one that is the actual target. Dude, you see, like immediately, no, like there is this preconcept that the technical audience has to be the actual target. It's not. It's not. That's exactly what they're trying to do. That's exactly the point. It's a different audience. This can actually turn a lot of technically minded folks away. Okay. The lack of source code in the front page is concerning. A simple generic example that demonstrates many of Rust's more interesting syntax features goes a long way in enticing a developer into the language. Studies show that most programmers learn best when they have examples to learn from. By not including source code on the front page, programmers will no longer get an insight as to why Rust syntax is a better choice over other language from a first perspective. This is why it's important that every crate displays examples in the README. Okay, I'm baffled at why some of the most important content has been relegated to tiny links in the footer. And like this is the whole theme of this post. Like I think that this person was noticing all the important things of the communication, except that we're missing the small detail that you are not the audience this time. And it's not the end of the world, and it's all good. And actually, it's really, really good. Again, this is the position I would like to be in with the Zig website. I hope to get there, not too far in the future. So let's keep reading. The testimonials are out of place, and to be perfectly honest, increases the shady as hell marketing by magnitude. They don't add any value to the pitch for Rust. I think there's another clear-cut example of why, of the difference in different audiences. As I said, I also personally feel like testimonials are not that nice, not that interesting. But as you go up, as you become a decision maker, your life changes. The weight on your shoulders is different. The price that you pay for wrong decisions, and not only you, but also all the people underneath you, goes much, much higher. You have to become much more careful with making decisions. And this is not something that, generally speaking, developers are in a position in, except a few cases like the ones that they tell you in university when you start a software engineering course, and they tell you about the machines that were supposed to do radiation therapy to patients. But cases like these cases aside, we developers have a very different mentality when it comes to that, and testimonials do have a use when you are in that other position. There's even a bunch of analyst firms that all they do is try to gauge the situation of the market, new interesting things, and they when you are somebody in a, I don't know, multi-billion company, and you have to decide, again, this is coming from my previous experience, you have to decide on which database system to use. That's a pretty friggin' big choice. And are you going to choose the new fancy NewSQL database just because it sounds interesting and it has a nice query language that your developers will love? No, of course not. For you, the problems are completely different. So that's why communication has to be different when you want to target those people. The front page could use some content to better explain why Rust should be chosen over another language. Why is it performant? Why is it reliable? Why is it productive? Why does this make Rust a better choice? What does it offer that we can't already do? Like, this is another point. Decision makers usually don't go too much into detail. They have other people go into details and do that work for them. Again, it depends on which scale you are. That this is really not a universal statement that I'm making, but the importance of justifying a claim here and there becomes less. Like, what justifies these claims are the testimonials. Anyway, it describes some things that you can do with Rust, but truth be told, these things apply to most other popular programming languages as well, so I don't feel this truly communicates anything unique about Rust. This merely describes that Rust can be used for the same tasks that other languages are capable of. Again, no, this is not the point. The point is, can we answer the question that a CIO can have on whether we are going to be covering their vertical, like can we answer the question whether we are going to focus on their vertical or not, or are they going to have trouble? Like, if you're somebody in embedded, you have certain needs and you don't care you don't care whether other languages can do it or not. You end up caring that the language that you end up choosing has to have those, even if it's not a differentiation factor from other languages. So it's a different type of communication. Perhaps the best feature that Rust has for CLI applications is the clap crate, but the CLI page does nothing to demonstrate how powerful Rust can be with the CLI built around it. Networking makes no mention of the Actix web framework, which is built on top of Tokio and does async IO. Rocket does not support async IO and is much slower as a result. Furthermore, Rocket does not build on a stable compiler, so it's very misleading to showcase it. Honestly, I have no opinion on this point of the argument. I'm not a I haven't used Rust enough to really talk about this. But if I were to venture a guess, again, I know nothing. But if I were to venture a guess, I would say maybe the example provided there was simpler, easier to understand, and that's what they wanted to showcase there. Just something that looks reasonable. Even if that meant to have, even if you were to use that in practice, you would get lower performance, or maybe the example ended up being that for other practical reasons, because they had deadlines, which is another interesting point that I'm going to get to soon. So this person, I think, really smelled what was going on, but they couldn't really pinpoint really the key part of the problem. You're not the audience, and that's important to understand. And it's important to understand also why other people, organizations behave the way they do. And again, sometimes you might not like it, but it can be beneficial to you as well. And this person, like everybody in the Rust community, benefits from Rust being more used, more accepted in companies. And if the price is that the website is not the best website possible for you anymore, I think that's a price that you should be willing to pay. So these stories, I think we are almost to an end of the story, but there is one last, I think, interesting point. I'm not gonna go too deep into it, but there was this mess. People got angry, and at the end, the Rust team promised a retrospective about what happened with the website. I have to admit, I'm not a big fan of what they did. So the retrospective ended up being like a retrospective blog post, and it took them a long time to make it and publish it. And I think so. This was from 2018, and they published the retrospective in May 2020. It took them roughly 2 years to write this blog post. Now, the reason why I don't like the blog post is because, in my opinion, it's not. I'm gonna say, I think it's missing some candor. I think that the perception that I get of what the Rust community and ethos is about is in good part being open, transparent, and clear with what's going on, right? They have this full process with RFCs and community contribution to stuff. And here, the community was expected to have for the same to happen with the website, but it didn't happen, and they were upset about this. And in my opinion, what the right thing to do should have been to explicitly simply say, we're sorry, the website is a marketing tool, and for this reason, we are also going through a launch. So in 2018, they were about to release the 2018 edition of Rust, and they were going to publish the website also at the same time. I've been through a couple of product launches, and they're messy. They are like not messy, but they are a complex process in a company, and it involves a marketing team with all the good and bad things that mean. And when you are doing a launch, you have a lot of company functions that have to come together and do their part to make the launch successful. And deadlines are super important there because attention is very, like, you can capture the attention of the public for a brief moment, then it flies away. And like, if you have the launch on one day, but then the new website comes out 1 week after, nobody cares. Nobody's gonna see it. And so a good marketing execution, and again, a good marketing execution is valuable. You want it because that's what gets Rust inside more companies. So you want a good marketing execution as a member of the Rust community. And so what happens is that deadlines are important because that's the moment where you get attention. So what happened, and here's my guess. Again, I never worked at Mozilla. I haven't followed closely this process. I'm doing like a bit of archaeology afterwards by fishing out links. And there's also a lot of smaller details that I read about that I'm not mentioning. I kind of like the IRC thing because I think there are relatively minor things that don't change the overall picture. But that said, so given the amount of imprecision inherent in this process, on top of the fact that I might be playing wrong, but my suspicion is that the redesign of the website, since it had a role in the product launch of 2018, it means that you had marketing involved and you had technical marketing people, and the deadlines were important, and you had then managers pressuring individual contributors to, to do their job, produce what they need to produce, put a check on that checkbox in the list of things that need to be ready for the launch to be ready. And they probably had, bonus goals tied to a successful launch. And so there was probably a bunch of pressure, managerial pressure inside Mozilla to get this thing right. Again, I'm using air quotes when I say right because it's right from a company perspective. But then when process is not right, the result is that people are burned out, they get stressed. You end up publishing subpar things, and because you at the end of the day, something has to give, like something got to give, right? So, having a successful launch sometimes when it's not done well means that some things are not going to be really well made. And what happened then, I guess, is that a lot of individual contributors were upset with what happened. A bunch of managers, probably from marketing, middle managers were involved, and these middle managers didn't care much about some of the details, and things went, I don't know, I guess the way things tend to go in companies when something goes wrong. Individual contributors tend not to have too much power when it comes to making decisions in the company, especially when it's tied to bonuses. So this retrospective was published by the Rust team, and in it, I think you find a bunch of boring things. This retrospective aims to be blameless and forward-looking. There is no benefit in relitigating what happened, and we are interested here in the planning, project management, and community aspects rather than critiquing the design or implementation. Lessons learned, and this is the part that I kind of find not very nice. What have we learned for the next time we take on a similar project? People first. People are more valuable than schedules. Keeping people healthy, happy, and productive is the most important aspect of managing a project. Like, really? Yes, but no. I mean, and I say but no because did you really discover this today? You didn't. The person. I'm not talking about strictly the person who wrote about this, right? I'm talking about the organization, the Mozilla organization as a whole. Like, this is how companies work. When there's pressure and a stupid middle manager has a bonus on the line or something like this, it's not even a bonus necessarily. It's just usual overachieving middle managers that I'm sorry, I'm being a bit unfair, but you get the idea. Companies do this stupid shit, and at one point companies stop caring. Like, company care about well-being of their employees to a degree, not entirely. So this first point, I think it's kind of this thing. Open communication. We should be as open as possible, as early as possible with communication about projects, even when the nature of the project means that we can't be open with all development. This is another point that I dislike, because in my opinion, Mozilla made the conscious choice of not being candid with the community and of not saying explicitly, this was a launch that we orchestrated internally in the company. The website was one of the most important assets that needed to be ready for the launch to be executed. Somebody in marketing was in control of this project. This is something that I'm assuming is the case. I don't know for certain. But anyway, somebody internal of the company was in charge of the success of this project. And so the usual open dance that we do with the community did not take place because the constraints were different. What we tried to achieve was different, and you have to accept as a community member that the website is not for you. The website is a marketing tool, and I think this should have been the right way of communicating. This should have been the right thing to say, because that's, in my opinion, is the ultimate truth. And if you want to be open, like, if you say that being open is a value, then you should practice what you preach. And I find this kind of disappointing, honestly. So, open communication. Get feedback early and set expectations about the kind of feedback which is useful. We have ongoing problems in the Rust community where mostly well-intentioned feedback from the community becomes overwhelming to the point of harassment, and we do not have a solution to this. Now, this is an interesting point. This is what I was referring to earlier. Like, was there, because I think at one point there was this phenomenon where somebody would come somewhat agitated into I don't know, into the forum and make a somewhat emotional post, and then moderator will say you should calm down. But then, because of the underlying discontinuity between the openness thing and the actual thing that Mozilla was doing, people didn't want to calm down. And what's interesting is that at this point, I think as a moderator, there is no winning move for you. By looking at the discussions, I don't think there was anything that moderators could have said to save the situation, except somebody actually telling the truth. But I think it really is a situation that you don't want to get yourself in the first place. This point, I understand from somebody on that side of the fence. I understand them feeling hurt about this, because I'm sure that the mob made a lot of annoyed unjustly a lot of individual contributors in the Rust team. But on the other hand, while I'm sure this is not any individual contributor's fault, as Mozilla, you kind of brought this upon yourselves. I'm sorry, in my opinion, again. So be prepared to manage feedback. Yes, recognize the complexity of projects and ensure appropriate project management. Projects should have clear ownership. Large projects should not be scheduled to finish at the same time. Again, this is, if you're doing a launch, that's without, you can't escape from this if you're doing a product launch. That's the point of what you're doing. Work iteratively, consider ongoing maintenance. So another thing that I think is that, like, here they are kind of saying between the lines that the website is, I'm not gonna read through that. Like, I'll leave a link in the description to this blog post, so you can read it yourself. But I think that if you read between the lines, they are kind of mentioning occasionally that, like, the website has certain goals, but they never stop and hit the nail on the head. Like, they never stop and clarify to somebody who is assuming that the website is for them and tell them, no, the website is not for you. And honestly, I don't think this is just a matter of not understanding that this was the problem. I think that somebody in the Mozilla company didn't think that this was a appropriate course of action. These might or might not be related to my personal experience, but I mean, companies are companies. So this, I think, my point of view is the whole story. What can we learn from this? What can I learn when working on the Ziglang website? Well, that's a good question. Personally, one thing that I learned is that I think that this specific brand of problem is never going to affect us, because we are never going, at least for the foreseeable future, and probably as long as I'm in the Zig Software Foundation, given my personality, we're never going to have a situation where we cannot be candid with what we are trying to achieve. And I think that's one of the most magical things about the Zig project. I'm sure there will be other problems that will prop up, but I really think that the keystone, like the problem that caused all other problems and then made the puzzle unsolvable unless you solve that one particular problem first, was the lack of candor and clarity from Mozilla. We're not going to have those, so I'm not worried that we'll have this kind of problem with the Zig redesign. People might not like the Zig redesign, and again, in the other video, I'll talk a bit about more the decisions that I'm making, what I'm trying to attempt, and people might agree or disagree with what we're trying to do. But in any case, this was interesting because, yeah, I think it's an interesting example of a situation where you're screwed. Once you get yourself in there, there is no way out. You should really avoid getting yourself in that situation. So, yeah, that was interesting for me. Again, this is not just an excuse to dive into drama and talk shit about other communities. I think that despite the horrible execution and the, in my opinion, distasteful lack of candor, what the individual contributors did was well executed. I'm a fan of the new Rust website, honestly. I wish them luck, and I hope that I'm sure actually that the website, given how good it is, it will succeed at its intent. They will get on board more decision makers, and I'm sure a lot of companies will enjoy working with Rust. As for the rest, life doesn't come with a fact sheet, so if you're in a company and you're an individual, I'm sure that the individual contributors in Mozilla had a good life lesson out of this mess. As for the community, I encourage you to, and this, I guess, it's also a message for the Z community at the end of the day. since these are the people that are going to be watching this video. Take a moment to think about why people and organizations are doing what they are doing. Take a moment to question your assumptions. Again, some people, I don't want to single out that person that I read their all their points, but because this person just happened to have a very concise version of what you would find all over the place on Reddit and in other forums. So there were a lot of people that had the same problem. So take a moment to question your assumptions and be careful, because not everybody is candid all the time, despite what they preach. And there are practical reasons why they sometimes can't say what they would like to say. And yeah, that's a problem, but it's real. And you have to think for yourself and understand when this phenomenon is in effect. Again, life doesn't come with a spec sheet, and you have to have a different mindset when you're approaching this type of problems. So I hope it was useful for you as it was for me. Thank you very much, and see you in the community update, which is coming up soon, maybe. I hope. Bye.